Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the program Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. My name is William Kumwembe. In the program today, we discuss persistent power outages crippling the country's economy and its possible causes. What needs to be done for the country to walk out of the darkness it has been for quite some time? And also in the program, budget deficit seen ballooning within a decade. We have a conversation with some key commentators on how the country's fiscal space has been operating in the past 10 years. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. This is Business Time, and in our main story in the program today, Malawi has for quite some time been grappling with power woes, a thing that has crippled so many sectors of the economy. There's been a blame game between the energy generating company, Egenco, and the Electricity Supply Corporation of Malawi, ESCOM, over what could be the main cause of the recent blackouts the country experienced at the previous weekend. Our journalist Chimwemwe Mangazi has been following through the trend where experts as well as some key government officials have been in talks to find out what is the cause of the persistent power outages and a way out in as far as addressing the challenge is concerned. He has this report.
Power outages have become the order of the day as the industry sector is subjected to over 8 hours of blackout every day. There seemed to be no solution in sight for the problem, as recent meetings between the Minister of Energy, Ibrahim Matola, and officials from Egenco and ESCOM have only yielded a blame game between the two companies. On the one hand, Egenco denies sabotage by some of its employees, being for its Chief Executive Officer William Liabunya's dismissal, as he puts it.
I wanted to read this email, which is coming from the President of the Union, which says disassociation of a Egenco Employees Union from any involvement in the authoring and circulation of a letter to the SPC. You have heard the heading. So that letter did not originate from Egenco, as far as we're concerned. And there's all the details from the union. It was not coming from employees of this company. There are people that have got their own interest in this company that authored that letter. So it's not coming from Egenco.
On the other hand, ESCOM denies negligence in correcting faults on its transmission lines, as its board chairperson Frederick Changaya says.
No, we are not aware of that negligence. That the fact-finding mission, which is continuing, is going to reveal the actual root cause. You must understand that there is too much sensationalization since power is a sensitive product. So a lot of people make a lot of comments which may not be real. That's why I think Honorable Minister, after consulting with His Excellency Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Jagwera, chose to come and meet us. The idea is on a fact-finding mission. After that, we will consolidate a joint position to say the problem is indeed this one, and then who is responsible, like the Honorable Minister has highlighted. There are so many responsibilities in power market.
And Matola himself awaits guidance from President Chagwera on addressing power outages.
I cannot spill the beans now because I have to report where I'm supposed to report. By the way, I'm sent by the President to establish this, and I have to report first to the President, and I'll get guidance from His Excellency Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera after I give him the report. That will be discussed when both parties are at one place, and then we'll give you a concrete answer, because we are not going to hide. We are going to do it in a public response, so that all can be done at the open forum. But at the moment, we can say here to say, some are saying it's sabotage, some are saying it's a fault, technical fault. So all together, when both utility companies are together, then we can have some of these nitty-gritty questions which you are asking. But for today, we were just establishing the root cause.
One thing that is coming out clear is that the institutions need more money to work effectively. This is what ESCOM Chief Executive Officer Kankwamba Kumwenda told Business Time recently.
The tariff regime runs for 4 years. The first, or the just ended, or which is ending, the tariff regime ending now, was effective 2018. For 4 years, so by September this year, the 4 years is coming to an end. So we are mandated to apply for a new tariff regime from 2022 to 2026. This application is not only for ESCOM, it's for the whole sector. We've got the power producers, including Genco, we've got ESCOM, and we've got Power Market Limited, which is responsible for the single buyer. So what came up in the papers, 99%, it's not only for ESCOM. ESCOM has their portion, the producers have got their portion, and the single buyer has got their portion. So the process is that we apply to, we submit what we do, what we call a base tariff filing to MERA with our proposals, all the players in the power sector. So MERA is going to look at the proposals. In fact, they need to do public hearings. These things will go to the public. That's why they're in the papers. MERA is going to do public hearings. They're going to hear views from customers and other stakeholders on the proposals made by the power sector. I think I want to demystify the fact that this is ESCOM's application. This is not ESCOM's application. It's a power sector application for a new tariff regime effective September this year to October or September 2026.
Just on Monday, Genco proposed a 36% tariff increase for the next 4 years when its officials met a joint parliamentary committee. President Lazarus Chakwera has a vision to increase the country's electricity generation capacity to 1,000 megawatts by 2025. But will this be achieved?
Now, a study by the Malawi Economic Justice Network, MEGIN, and the Tax Justice Network Africa has revealed that Malawi's fiscal space has resulted in large and increased budget deficit. In the past decade, for instance, the deficit has seen widening from about 30.7 billion kwacha to 857.8 billion kwacha. This is according to the study. Now, what is the remedy to the volatile environment in as far as the implementation of the national budget is concerned? This is the question our journalist from Lilongwe, Kumbo Kariwo, posed to Francis Kairu, who is Tax Justice Network Africa Policy Officer.
The question is often posed as to why should African countries focus on domestic resource mobilization as one of their options for development. And I want to say that for us to develop African countries, we have several options. One, we could focus on debt, but for how long shall we keep on borrowing? We can also focus on aid, but for how long shall we continue walking around with begging baskets, looking for aid to develop our countries? We could also focus on building our economies, enhancing our domestic resource mobilization abilities. That's the best way. If you look at our national development agendas, if you look at our SDGs, we will not achieve them if we do not mobilize enough resources domestically, if we do not focus on building our economies, if we do not industrialize, if we do not ensure that we have enough citizens, enough companies, enough multinationals paying tax within our countries. Additionally, the tax burden currently is heavier on the poor, is heavier on those that cannot be able to shoulder it, and lighter on the rich, lighter on multinationals. For us to change those dynamics, we need to refashion our domestic resource mobilization abilities as countries. This is true for Malawi, this is true for Nigeria, this is true for Kenya and every other country within Africa. The tax burden is heavier on the poor than on the rich because of how we have fashioned our taxation systems. We have focused a lot on regressive taxes, that is VAT and personal income tax, and not focused enough on corporate income tax or CIT. For us to change the dynamics, we have to look at whether multinationals are paying their fair amount of tax. We need to ensure that the biggest corporates that derive more profits pay more tax. We need to ensure that we design our systems to focus more on progressive forms of taxation like corporate income tax, and run away from regressive forms of taxation like VAT and personal income tax. A proper taxation system needs to be fair. It needs to be easily accessible. It needs to cost less for people to pay tax. And it needs to be so easy for anyone to declare how much they have earned and how much they need to pay as tax, and to pay their tax. We have designed our systems to be so archaic, to be so hard for people to comply. We need to adopt more digital ways of allowing people to pay their tax and do their tax compliance. We need to utilize more systems which can be able to allow people from anywhere around the country or within the globe to be able to file their tax returns, to know how much tax is due from them, for them to pay their tax, and for them to be able to get tax compliance certificates. It is as easy as the same way we register mobile phones today. It is possible for people to transact using their bank accounts from their mobile phones. It should be the same way for people to transact on matters of tax from the comfort of their mobile phones. We are too relaxed about these things. And as a continent, we need to get to that point where everybody is able to pay tax easily, get their tax return filed, and be able to get their tax compliance certificate processed automatically. If we do not do that, we still have archaic systems, raising less tax and not working for our economies.
We also posed the same question to other experts to find out what's their view in as far as addressing the problem is concerned.
I am Dr. Donatius Patera. I'm the consultant for the Malawi Economic Justice Network and also the Tax Justice Network Africa. I was consulted to do a research on fair taxation, illicit financial flow, and debt management. Well, I should start with in terms of fair taxation, which we concentrated on domestic resource mobilization. Research found that when you are talking about domestic resource mobilization, this is a key aspect which African countries should adopt, because it will help these countries now to enhance their development. If you can see that there's donor fatigue these days, it is usually that these countries have to take a step to ensure that they fund resources within their own countries and ensure that they achieve their goals. If you look at Malawi as a country, we have got Malawi 2063. If you go down into that document, you are going to observe that we want to be self-reliant by 2063. But how do we become self-reliant if we don't have resources? So where do we get the resources? We need to get the resources within the country. And in terms of illicit financial flows, the report also showed that there is a lot of money that is being externalized in most countries, and especially Malawi. You can say when you cascade down into the report, you are going to observe that there are a lot of millions of dollars that we are losing every year to other countries. But we can overcome that. One of which is make sure that we have got a robust system that is now the connecting all authorities that are responsible for curbing the illicit financial flows. In terms of debt management, we need to now to find ways on how we can manage our debts, because how much do we borrow for investing in productive issues? Most of the debt, what we borrow is for consumption. The economists have talked about this for a long time. We need now to find better ways of investing our resources. And when we have got domestic resources, that means we can now control how much we can borrow from international or local. One, there are so many loopholes because our maybe technology issues, our systems are not robust, and also on top of that, for example, we talk about transfer pricing issues. The legal framework maybe be poor, so that it is difficult for someone to follow up whether the framework has really supported that document to be legal or not. For example, if a multinational company, you have got an office in Nairobi and another one in Malawi, this person can claim that he is sending the money, the management fee maybe in Nairobi, but maybe this did not happen. But to prove that, it means we need experts. And on top of that, I've emphasized in my presentation that we need political will. The government has to come in and see how they can support those authorities that are responsible on curbing these illicit financial flows.
Remember, this is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. And my name is William Kumwembe. Moving on with the program. Illicit financial flows has been singled out as one of the key threats to economic growth and development for the country. This was said during a workshop that the Minister of Finance and other stakeholders hosted in Blantyre. Our journalist Justin Kwe was there, and he caught up with Maxwell Mkwezalamba, who is an advisor at the AU High-Level Panel on Illicit Financial Flows, to find out the magnitude to which the problem is in the country.
I must say that this is quite a big problem. Actually, following up on the work that has been done by the African Union High-Level Panel on Illicit Financial Flows from Africa, the amounts that we are talking about is that the continent is actually losing in excess of $50 billion a year. There have been recent studies that have even, come up with figures that could be close to $100 billion a year. And these obviously are resources that are, quite substantial, particularly when you compare with what you are getting from outside. The resources are being lost through a number of means. Transfer pricing, particularly through the transnational corporations, but we also have instances of misinvoicing. You have instances of poorly negotiated contracts, particularly within the extractive industries. And this, to a large extent, also because we also don't have our own capacities as a continent. There are issues surrounding tax evasion, as well as abusive tax avoidance. So legally they may sound legal, but then in the process we are having to lose out a lot of resources. But also even through corruption, maybe through government senior government officials conniving with people from outside and end up losing all these resources. So the amounts, I must say, are quite excessive. Africa Continental Free Trade Area is quite something, I think, the positive direction, because we are basically looking at trading within the continent, which currently is quite low. I mean, you're looking at intra-African trade at around 12–13%. Now, that should help to a large extent, because if you look at, for example, transfer pricing, and as I said, this would be something that would be done, say, for example, by the transnational corporations, you are cutting out those ones and then having to deal with our own firms within Africa. And we see also the Africa Continental Free Trade Area as a way of boosting income for the continent, and this would also help us in raising revenues that we need in financing our development as a continent. At the moment, have a report which is a draft prepared, addressing a number of questions, mostly relating to the recommendations of the African Union High-Level Panel. The report looks at the scale of illicit financial flows out of Malawi, but on this one, of course, it's kind of difficult. The figures may tend to vary. I mean, they need to be confirmed, because, as you know, these are illicit flows, and therefore the figures tend to be hidden by those involved. The report has also looked at the various government departments, ministries, agencies working on illicit financial flows. So we have in mind the Anti-Corruption Bureau, the Office of the DPP, the police, the Reserve Bank, the Malay Revenue Authority as examples. And here, it's more about whether they do have the capacity to actually do this work, financial, human capacity. It also does, touch on other areas to do with the law, regulatory, framework. You look at, let's say, the existence of the Financial Intelligence Authority, which is also one of those institutions that would be looked at. What the law does in order to assist the country in stemming illicit financial flows. So with that kind of work, the discussions here, I see the report being finalized. It may take maybe a month or so, depending on how much work we have to do, and then it will then be presented at a national workshop. So it will be at that time that the report will be made public. So I'm looking at probably about a month or so.
Now, what is the government doing towards addressing the problem? This is the question we posed to Mark Gatsonga-Piri, who is Minister of Trade and Industry.
Let's first of all start, defining what illicit financial flows is all about. Illicit financial flows are transactions which are made outside the legal system of moving money around. It's big, it's serious, it makes countries poor. Now, Malawi and other regional countries have put together their resources to find ways of fighting against that. This workshop is about sharing ideas among countries. And at the end of the day, we have to fight together, because when we talk of moving money around, we are talking of moving money maybe from Malawi to Zambia, from Malawi to South Africa, outside the legal system. But more so, it is about moving money out of Africa. That's why, as a continent, we have to work together to make sure that we are fighting these illicit financial flows together. At the end of the day, if we win the battle, we'll find a lot of improvements in our economies, because it is not small. It is perpetrated by the elite, just making our people get poorer and poorer, just making us relying on aid. But at the end of the day, we have got a lot of resources on this continent. So we are saying, let's fight. Let's fight together to make sure that we stamp out, or at least reduce, illicit financial flows. All what will be discussed here will be put together as government through the Ministry of Finance, because we are talking of money here, and money matters are handled by the Ministry of Finance. We in trade get involved because the people involved in the illicit trade are business people. So we also get ourselves involved because it compromises progress in trading activities. Money getting out illegally is depleting our forex. It is making us have a lot of shortages in terms of materials. Our factories are suffering, and at the end of the day, we are, or the ordinary people out there are the ultimate losers. That's why we are saying, no, there will be that proper coordination among MDAs, so that we are joining hands, we are joining our brains, we are looking at things together to make sure that we are fighting a single battle and a winning battle for that matter. I may not have specific figures at this point in time, but they're figures which our colleagues in Reserve Bank have. So when you've got an opportunity now to talk to Reserve Bank, get all the figures and look at how big it is. Or I can say here is, it is big. It is making us poor, and it is making our businesses struggle. The legally set up businesses are finding it difficult to get all the financial resources they want, because a lot of it is going out through illegal means. So we cannot underestimate it. It is big. It is one of the contributing factors for our poverty here. So it is only just and proper for us to join our hands and fight against it. It may not be easy because it needs investment. But as government, we are committed to invest in whatever we can to make sure that this battle is winnable, and we have to win. We are not working alone, as I said earlier on. We are working with other African governments, and we are coordinating with the international community because it is a global problem. Every country is in this situation. When you talk of advanced technology, we may not be that advanced as Malawi, but we are striving to get there, where fighting illicit financial flows is concerned. So we'll continue to fight with or without resources until we win the battle.
Well, that interview also brings us to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, my name is William Kumwembe. Always remember, if it doesn't make money, then it doesn't make sense. Stay safe and bye for now.